Hello everyone and welcome to the second part of this tutorial series. In this one, I'll be showing you how to manage the state of your application using a state management library called Redux. So from the last video, this was where we stopped, whereby we passed our states through the props by the method called prop drilling, where we had to pass it down through every child component to get to where we want to use it. And in the GitHub repo, I added some of all these problems, and in this video I'll be showing you how to solve all these problems using Redux. So one of them was deep prop drilling, so whereby we had to pass down the state from the parent down to the child through multiple steps. And I told you this would be a nightmare if you had about like 20 components in your component tree. I also talked about bulky parent components, just like this app component. At the end of this video, we are going to see how this app component is going to be linear. Then the next one is passing props through components that don't use it. For example, this screen component does not make use of this channel name. So I'm going to show you how to solve all this stuff in this video. So the first things first is what is Redux? So Redux is just simply a state management library that helps you manage your states, and its approach is by creating a global store. So your application would just be having just one single store whereby other components can connect to this store and get information. So this store is going to be kind of like a single source of truth. So if the channel name in that store is called Flying Hawk, it's going to be Flying Hawk throughout your application as long as those components are connected to it. So the first thing I'll be talking about is how do we create the store first of all. So to do that, I'm going to create a folder inside the source components, and okay, I already created it. The folder is going to be called states. So this is where we're going to be managing our states, because remember, Redux is a state management library. So inside there, I'm going to create a new file called store.js. And before I continue, I installed some packages already. So I installed, the packages we'll be using here is React Redux and also Redux. We'll be using this. And one more package, which I'm going to talk about later on in the video, is Redux DevTools extension. You're going to get to understand what this all does, but for now we're going to be making use of React Redux and Redux. So back to the tutorial. So in our store.js file, we're going to create a store, because remember I told you Redux approach of managing your state is by creating a global store. So we're going to be doing that. So we're going to import create store from Redux, and I'll be talking about the differences between Redux and React Redux. So create store, we're going to create a store. I'll name this store, and we'll make use of this function create store. So now what does create store expect? Let's just hover, or we can control and click. I could go to the file. So create store over here, it expects a reducer and an enhancer, but this is a TypeScript file. If you look over here, okay, have to zoom this in. Okay, cool. So this is a TypeScript file. So in TypeScript, although this is not a TypeScript tutorial, but the question mark means that this second argument is optional. So over here is the first argument, the reducer, and second, enhancer. So if the question mark here shows that the enhancer is optional, do you think the reducer is optional? No, it's not. So reducer is an important argument you have to pass to the create store function. So we'll talk about this enhancer in the next video, but let's just focus on this reducer. So you might be asking what a reducer is, but before that, okay, yeah. So the way Redux is structured, a reducer is just simply used to update the store. You don't have to update the store directly. Let me show you what that means. So I'll create a new file in the state folder called reducer. So reducer is just a simple function that update the store. So you don't, in Redux, you don't update the store directly. You update the store through a reducer. So I'm going to be showing you the advantages of using a reducer as the tutorial progresses. But first of all, we'll create a reducer, and it's a function. So I'll just name it reducer. I'll use the arrow function notation. And the reducer is going to have two arguments. First is the initial state, and second is the action. So the initial states, the state, we could give it an initial state. And remember, from this application, what are the states we want to manage? We want to manage the channel name and the user. But for now, I'll be focusing on the channel name. So in our reducer.js file, I'll go back and pass this object called with the value of channel name. And what is that going to be? Flying hawk. So this is just going to be the initial state when our application starts. So since you know this is the initial state object, I could just cut it out and create a variable called initial state. So this is an object, then I pass it here. So this is ES6 default argument pattern over here. That is why we could pass in an initial value to the argument. So the reducer is a function which takes in two arguments. The first one is the state, and the second one is the action. For the state, we just passed in the initial values we want our store to hold while our application starts. So what does a reducer function do? So by default, like I told you, a reducer function is used to update your store. So it's kind of like the middleman between your component and your store. So if your component wants to do anything, it sends a message, the reducer receives this message, and it updates your store accordingly. So since it is updating the store, we could just simply do, since it's updating the store, we could just say return state. So for now, we are just returning the state, and the state is going to be returning would be this initial state, because the first thing I want to achieve in this tutorial is not to update the store. I just want to pass in some values to the store and display them in our application. So once more, take a look at the reducer function. It's a very simple function that takes in the state and also the action. We'll talk about action later on in this video. And what does it do? Inside it, it returns the state. So what do you think is going to be returning? It is going to be returning what? Flying hawk. Cool. So now we have the reducer function, which I told you is just used to update the store. We could go back to our store.js file, but before we go back, I'll quickly export the reducer as a default export. We save, then we go back to the store, and what do? Yeah, you guessed this right. We'll import the reducer from, cool. So we have it here in our file. Then remember, it is the first argument, so we pass in the reducer. Cool. And I'll talk about the enhancer stuff later on in this video. So we'll do export default. What are we exporting? The store. So cool, let's do a brief recap once more. The reason I'm taking it step by step is just to let you guys know that Redux is not as hard as so many beginners are scared of it. So we have a store, and the store is being created from the reducer. Why? Because the reducer has what? The current state of our application, and the reducer can also change the state of our application and pass it back to the store. So our components are going to be connected to the store and not the reducer. I'm going to show you how that works. So since we have the store created already, the next question would be, how do we connect our application to this store? How do we send this data, Flying Hawk, into our application? That question is very easy. So go to the root of our application. Currently, the root of our application is in the index.js file. and the index.js files render the app components, which is this component. So inside this file, I'm going to be passing the store to the root of our application. And you might be asking, okay, how do we actually do that? That is where the second package we installed comes into play, the React Redux package. So the React Redux package is just it's just a package that has some components that makes our React.js apps interact easily with Redux. One thing to note, Redux is just a state management library on its own. It has nothing to do with React, because you can use Redux in multiple, you can use Redux on its own, and you can also use Redux in other JavaScript libraries and frameworks. So Redux is just for managing states through a store, while React Redux is kind of like a wrapper around Redux. It's not really a wrapper, it just provides you with components that makes your React.js app interact easily with Redux. So inside here, I'm going to be making use of a provider component. So the provider component is just, okay, you can see it over here, makes the Redux store available to the connect calls in the component hierarchy, blah, blah, blah. Lots of big words here. But what the provider just simply does is just a component that takes in the store and passes it down through our application. So now every component we create in our application is a child of app component. So if we wrap the provider over here, okay, I'm going to move this guy over here. So if I wrap the application with the provider component, the store is going to be passed down through the hierarchy. So this provider component is created with something called the context API, which is part of the React.js library. So what that means is, but before we do that, let's click on the provider because it's better to show you guys than to talk. So you can see it makes the Redux store. And how I got here, I just did control and I clicked on this and it took me to the definition. So don't be scared about all this stuff. It's just TypeScript, but you can see here. So the provider class extends a component that has some props. So if I click on this provider props, where are you? Okay, cool. So now I want to ask a quick question. Is the store argument needed? Yes or no? Is the context argument needed? Yes or no? And you can say the context argument is not needed because of this question mark here. So that means it is optional. But the store parameter or the store argument is needed because you don't have a question mark here. That is just basic TypeScript stuff. So now, we now know that the provider requires us to pass the store, right? So we have the store prop, but we don't have the store in this file. So what do? Yeah, you guessed it right. We import the store from state/store. Cool. So now I can pass down the store. So what this does is very, very simple. So if you wrap any components with a provider, any child or any component that is going to be inside this app component would have access to the store if we connect to the store. I don't know if that made any sense. So when we wrap this app component, because if we go to app component, the app component contains our screens. Can you see the app component over here contains every single component in our application. Why? Because it is the parent. So if we come over here to index.js and we wrap this app component with the provider, we have automatically made the store available to every single application here. We did not make it really available, but we made it accessible via the connect function. I'll show you how to use the connect function to connect to the store. But what that means is that when the provider is being wrapped to the app components, every component under this AMP component has the ability, yes, that's the better explanation. They have the ability to connect to the store. So the reason why this is possible is because of the context API in React.js. So cool. So now let me do a brief recap once more. So first things first, we created a store. And this store what needs a reducer. What is a reducer? A reducer does what? Updates the store and also gives you the initial state of the store. So you can see here, the reducer, we've not done any updates here. We've not manipulated the store. We've not changed any value in the store. We just returned what? The states. And what is the current state being returned? Flying Hawk. So now, this is a reducer, and the reducer has the store. And this store is going to be connected to our application using what? The provider component. Are we making progress? I think so. But now you might be saying, okay, since we have connected our application to the store, how do we see the current store? Because in the reducer over here, I have the channel name to be Flying Hawk. So how do we see that? Very, very simple. So I'm going to do a console.log over here. I'm going to log out the store. And if I bring down let me move this stuff down here. Cool. Okay. So, and I also zoom it. Okay. Let me just maximize this window. Okay, so if we take a look here, this is the object being returned. This is the store object. It has different properties: dispatch, get state, replace reducer, subscribe, and all sim. All the stuffs are just scary stuffs. But the thing we want to work with now is get state, because this is where we are going to be. This is the function. You can see it's a function that gets the state of our application or the state of the store. Later on, we'll work with dispatch. But first of all, let's work with get state. So to get the state, very simple. Instead of printing out the store, I do store.get state. Then if we head back here, cool. Can you see it, guys? So we have the channel name, which is our initial state. So the channel name is our initial state that was passed through the reducer function. So I think we're making progress. So I'll come back here. So now, since we can see that we now have the state in the store, we can be able to replace it in our application. So I'll comment this out and I hide the console. Then the first place I want to send this data to the store would be, the first place I would want to make use of this data would be in our app component, because in our app component, you can see that we are making use of the channel name here. So to be able to have access to this store, we have to connect our application, or we have to connect the component to the store. So what provider does here is just to give any component inside this app component access to connect to the store. So by default, it is not yet connected to the store until we connect to the store. And look at it over here. If I hover on provider, can you see? Makes the Redux store available to the connect calls in the component hierarchy below. So now for app to connect to this store, we have to make use of the connect function. And this connect function is in the React Redux library. So remember what I told you, React Redux just it's a library that provides us components and functions to make your React.js applications interact better with Redux. Redux was not created for React. Redux can be used by any front-end framework, or you could use Redux in your vanilla JavaScript code. So we've imported the connect function over here. And connect function is a function that returns a higher order function. I'll show you guys what that means very soon. So the connect function, I'll just save it. So you can see it's even very descriptive. We are connecting our app to what? The Redux store. Straightforward. We are connecting our app to the Redux store. So you might see this parenthesis and this other parenthesis. This might look confusing, but if you've done or if you know your basic JavaScript, you should understand what is happening. Although I'll show you a basic example of what currently happens here. But before that, I think I'll just explain, then I'll come back and do a basic example of a connect function in our browser to show you how it works. So now, the connect function requires some arguments. So the first one is going to be a function called map. But before I do that, I can just click on this so you'd see I'm not creating all these things up. So you can see the two arguments here, map state to props and map dispatch to props. We'll talk about map dispatch to props later on. But map state to props is going to take the states. See, it's going to take the states in our Redux store over here. It's going to take this channel name and make it a prop in our component. It's going to make it a prop in our component. That's what the connect function does. But I'll show you what that means. Map state to props. I'm going to use the arrow function notation. So state is going to return an object, and this object, one of the value would be, can you guess? Channel name. Cool. So channel name is going to be state.channel name. I'm going to explain what this does. So I also pass map state to props. So what this function, this first argument does is it is going to go to our states. So over here, where is that? Our store over here is being connected to this reducer. And this reducer, the initial state is this object. So this initial state, you can see from our reducer, we are returning the states. So to get the value flying up, we are going to do state.channel name. That is this initial state.channel name, because this is a JavaScript object. So that is how we can be able to get this stuff over here. So we are just calling that initial state.channel name. So it's going to go inside our Redux store and return back what? Flying hawk. So we have to pass this map state to props function in our connect function over here. So if we save this, the next question will be, how do I get to display this? And that's very simple. So since we are not going to be using this guy over here, I could delete this and pass in, for the user, I could just pass in, name should be this name over here for now. We'll still convert this to Redux. I will delete this, but I'll just leave it like this so it won't cause any confusion. So I'll remove the channel name. I'd also remove this handler for setting the channel name. Then over here in our props, remember, look at this, map state to props. So it's going to take this value, channel name, and it is going to add it in our props. So it's going to add channel name to part of the property of the app component. So if we save this now, just watch and see. Okay, update channel handler is not defined. Okay, I could remove all this and it will still work. Cool. I could even remove channel name now because we are not using it there. I could remove this too. So cool, our application is currently working. So you can see this flying hawk over here is being gotten from our Redox store. Can you see we don't have any set states, use states React hook. We are getting this channel name from our Redox store. And you can see so far, this is very easy. And I've removed all those dependencies, all those properties in the screen component over here. That is why you don't see Flying Hawk over here and you don't see Flying Hawk around your application. You just see it at the app component. So we are making some progress here. So let me explain what this stuff actually does. This map state to prop does. So what the connect function does. So the connect function is a higher order function that takes in some other functions. So what it does is that it returns another function, and that function it returns is what? A higher order component. So that higher order component it returns takes in another component called app and passes that properties to it. That looks complicated, but I'll just code a very basic connect function here so you see what I mean. If you understand how the connect function works, you can just skip this part. So I'm going to do something very quickly. So function connects it returns another function this second function it returns would just be, let me just say hello. So this is the connect function, and if we do this, we can see world. But if I run this, watch what happens. It returns a function. Why? Because this connect function over here returns another function. So to be able to call this second function, I'm going to put in this second parenthesis. So if I run it, watch and see what happens. It displays hello world. Let's go back to our code. Can you see what's happening here? This connect function returns a function, and this first function that it returns is called a higher order component. So if you know your React.js, you know what higher order components do. So they just take in a component, modify it, and produce a new component. So the reason I showed that example is just for you to see why you have this double parenthesis. So back to our online editor here. I could zoom it, right? Okay. So back to the online editor here. When we did not have this second parenthesis, it returned what? A function. That means it is returning this inner guy over here. Then to call this inner guy, we have to pass in the second parenthesis. Cool. So now, if I want to relate this to your React.js application or Redux, how this Redux component does, I'm going to create a simple component. All this part of this video is not needed. If you understand or if you can work with what you just saw here, map states to props, taking this channel name and making it available here as a property, just skip this part. So this part is just kind of like explaining more in depth for you guys to understand what is actually happening. So I'm going to do function my component. I want to simulate what happens currently here. So function my component is going to have some props. This is like a React.js component, but it's not going to be returning what you expect it to return. So I'm now going to say it doesn't really matter, I can use let initial props equals to, what am I going to create here? Okay, user name should be John. Cool. Then return, I'm going to explain what I'm doing. Return using the spread operator, then okay, so this is a simple component. This is not a real component, but I'm just trying to explain how that connect function works. So you take in, it has this props over here. It has an initial props of the username, probably the guy that is currently logged in. Then it returns the initial props, which is this username, and any property being passed to it. So let's create a basic connect function to see how this works. If this is getting confusing for you guys can skip this part as long as you understand the code I just wrote previously. So the connect function is going to take in the state, and what is it going to do? It's going to return a function. So this example here is a basic higher order function. This one is a little bit more complex. So it's going to return let me think. So function connect is going to return, it's going to take in the components. I explain what I'm currently doing. Then I pass in the states. Am I even making sense? Just hold on, let me think about this. So it takes in the states. Let me just do this to see what I want to do. So, okay, yeah, correct. So I pass in the states. So the states could be friends. Friends could be an array. Then the second one is what's the component, and I'll pass in my component. Let me run this, then I'll explain. Cool. So you can see what is happening here. So you might be confused, like, how does this connect function insert this channel name to this app component? So that is what I just simulated over here. So we have a simple component, and what does it do? It has its own initial properties inside it, and the initial property is what? Username with the value of John. So what it does is that it creates a new object by taking the initial prop over here, that is spreading this value here. So it has the username and any other additional properties being passed to it. So over here, which properties are being passed to it? So you can see it here. This component over here is my component, and it is taking the state over here. So this state is going to be this guy. The reason why this state is this guy is because the connect function first argument is the state, which is friends. Then the second argument is what? Components. That means we are executing this inner function component, and we passed in my component. So if you take a look at this and also take a look at this line number 21, you can see some similarities. So if you don't understand it, just take your time and look through to see how this works. But the main point I want to make here is the connect function takes in the state and passes it to the next argument, or to the next function, which is a higher order function that passes the channel name to your app component. So you just take your time and see how this works. If you don't really understand how it works, but you know how to write the code, just write the code and continue and move on. So, and if there's any part you don't understand in this video, you could just comment you could just make a comment and ask your question, then I could reply. So now we have Flying Hawk working over here. So now the next thing to do would be to display it in other places in our application. So since we have access to this connect function now, we can be able to connect whichever components we want to our Redox store. So now we need it in our navbar, but the next question to ask would be, so I go to components. Should I connect my navbar to the Redox store? Do you think it's wise connecting the navbar to the Redox store? I don't think it's wise, because if we connect the navbar to the Redox store, we're also going to connect this main component to the Redox store. We'll connect the footer to the Redox store. So instead of connecting it individually in these three places, why don't we just connect settings to the Redox store? Because settings is the direct parent of all these components. So I'll explain why this is a good approach. So instead of you connecting in all your whole components here, just connect it to settings component, and I explain why I'm going to connect it to that. So we'll do the same thing. We'll come over here and import connects from React Redux. Yeah, you guessed it right. So over here, we'll do the same thing again. Connect so the first function takes in what? I'll just copy it. The first function takes in map state to props. And the second function takes in the component. So remember what I told you. The first function returns a higher order component. Then the higher order component takes in the settings component and passes those props to it. That is why we have access to the channel name over here. Okay, we already have access to it over here. So I could just simply come here and I could delete all these stuffs. Okay, no, let me leave it. So if I save this, we should be able to see Flying Hawk appear every single place. Cool. So we have Flying Hawk in our navbar, we have Flying Hawk in the main component, and we have Flying Hawk in the footer. And the reason why we have Flying Hawk there is because the channel, this prop name, I gave it the same name so to correspond to the previous variable name I gave it. So now, there's something you would notice. If we go back to app, can you see screens? Screens components, we can go to screens. Can you see? We can remove all this. We can remove channel name. We can also remove this. And voila, our application still works. So we can see that screens components, you know the previous problem, if we go to this slide. Okay, problem number 3. Passing props through components that don't use it. So now with Redux, we have solved this problem of passing props through components that don't need it. We've solved that problem already, because with Redux, what we did is that we skipped screen. You understand? We skipped the screen component. We just connected to the store directly. So the store is just outside all these components, and settings connected to it. Settings subscribed to the store. The same thing with app too. So we have eliminated the need to write or to pass down all those props through the screens component. So now let's see the problems we've solved so far. We've solved deep prop drilling. So now Redux does not eliminate prop drilling. What it does is that it reduces prop drilling. That was why I added deep prop drilling. So with Redux, you reduce the amount of steps you have to go through to pass your props. So now previously, when we needed Flying Hawk inside this navbar, we went through 1, 2, 3. But now with Redux, we're only going through only one step. You see the benefits? Previously, we had to go through 1, 2, 3. But with Redux, we just went from settings to navbar, and you can see it over here. So you can see settings is connected over here, and directly we passed it to navbar. So we've solved that deep prop drilling problem. The same thing with this guy over here. So previously we went through 1, 2, then contents, main contents. That's 4 steps. But now we are just going through from settings to 1, 2 steps. So we've saved 2 steps of drilling. So you can see with Redux, you eliminate unnecessary deep prop drilling. Also, we've also solved the problem of having a bulky parent component, because if you go to our app.js file, can you see it is linear compared to the previous way it was before? Although I've not done side effects, getting the user from the external API, but the components will still look like this. Then the next one is passing props through components that don't need it. You can see the screens component is now linear. It does not have the whole unnecessary class name, update class name, and all those stuffs. Then the final one is passing values to components that don't share the same parents. Okay, now passing props values to components that don't share the same parents. Redux eliminates this because with the provider components over here, we have access to the store in our entire application, because our application in general is going to have one single parent, and that parent is going to be the provider component. So every single component in our app would share the same parent, which is called the provider. So you can see now we have solved these 4 problems with Redux. So the next thing we would be doing, so the advantage of this is just to show you guys that Redux actually solves some problem for you. Redux actually does all these things for you, because in the previous video we had all these problems where we are repeating ourselves, but with Redux, you see, we don't have to repeat ourselves over and over again. So the next thing I would want to do would be to be able to update this, because right now we can't update this. You see, I'm clicking, but we can't update this. Can you see? On-chain channel name is not a function, blah blah blah. So we are gonna do that right now. So which leads us to the next place. The question is, how do you update your store in Redux? And I've answered this question previously. I said you do it through the reducer. But if you want to do it through the reducer, how do you send that action from your components to your reducer? I just told you the solution now. You do that using actions. So let me just do some comments over here. So what are actions? Actions are the way, an action is just simply an information you send to the reducer. I can come again. An action is an information you send to the reducer. So, and this information is going to have a type. So let me do this. I'm going to do some explanation here. So an action is an information you send to the reducer. This action must be an object. The object must have a type property. So, a brief recap. An action is an information you send to the reducer. This action must be an object. So this object is also contain. This object would also contain a type property. So now you said an action is an information you send to the reducer. So how do you send this information to the reducer? The answer is simple. You send it from your components. So if you want to update your Redux store, you do it in 4 steps. So step one, your components, I'm sorry I'm typing this stuff out. Your components sends, the word here is dispatches, sends an action. Then what's the next step? The reducer receives the action, then the reducer updates the store based on the action type and data. So this data, we could call it a payload. Payload just means additional data. So step one, your component dispatches an action. That means your component sends the information of what it wants to do. So the next one is the reducer receives this action. Then after it receives the action, the reducer updates the store based on the action type and data. Then the components connected to the store are updated. So now, like I said, an action is just an information you send to the reducer, and this action must be an object with the type property. So an example of an action could be something like this. Since an action is an object, we have the curly brace. So the type could be, what do we do in this application? Update channel name. So it's just a string. Update channel name. Cool. So remember what I told you, an action is just an object that has the type property. So when the component dispatches an action called update channel name, the reducer takes this action and reads and checks the type. So if the type is update channel name, then it updates the store. It updates the state with this particular information. So now I'll explain what that means. And I told you, okay, let me also add this. An action can also have more optional properties. So this type action can have another property called, I'll call it a payload. You can call it whatever thing you want, but I'll call it a payload. So this payload is going to be channel name, and I can now say the channel name should be flying dodo. A brief recap once more. So you can see the type here, update channel name. So the reducer is going to check the type. Okay, you mean update channel name? Cool. What data do you want me to update the store with or the state with? It checks what? The payload. And it now checks the channel name should be flying dodo. So the reducer checks the type. If the type is update channel name, it now checks the additional data and updates the store accordingly. So now we're going to be covering step 2 and 3, which is the reducer receives the action. So previously we've made use of this state whereby we return this state over here. That is why we have flying hawk. The next step is to do simple, what am I doing? Should configure this stuff already. Why? Oops. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Okay. Okay. So yeah. So I could do a simple if statement here and do if this action over here. Remember, the action has the type property. So if action is equal to what? If action.type, if action.type is equal to update channel name, do something, you get. So now the reducer receives the action. So it also checks the type and updates the store accordingly. So now if the action.type, that means if the action type is update channel name, do something. What do I want to do? I want to return the new state of our application. So I'm going to do return. We'll spread the states. I'll explain why we did this. When I explain, when it works, I'll come back to explain why. So we spread the current states. That means you are trying to update the state immutably. So what next? We now say from the states. The state has this value called channel name. So I'll do channel name should be equals to what? Action dot payload dot name. I could just say action.payload.channel name. So you can see now the reducer receives the action. After it receives the action, the reducer updates the store based on the action type and data. So you can see now it checks if the action type is update channel name. I want you to update channel name with the new channel name I just sent. So the reason why we are doing this stuff, okay, I'll come back to why we are spreading these states here. But the main thing is that we are sending a new state with the updated channel name. So now we are going to do step 1 right now. So your component dispatches an action. So back in our settings screen, we want to dispatch an action, because if you can see the flow over here, the component dispatches an action, the reducer receives the action, then the reducer updates the store based on the action type and data. Then every connected component into the store are updated. So back in our settings, the reason why we are doing settings here is because we want to do the whole logic here and just pass it down to the content and the main component. So the second argument of the connect function, if I click on this, is, can you see it? Map states, map dispatch to props. That means map the actions to props. So I'm going to be using the arrow function here. I'm going to be using a shorter notation. So map dispatch to props, and it's going to take in dispatch, which is going to be returning. This is a shorter form for the previous. This is a shorter form. So this is an arrow function, which means return an object. The parenthesis is used to return the object. So instead of writing this long form, I'm going to do it in this shorter form. So instead of 5 lines, we do it in this. So now I want to do what? Map dispatch to props. What should be the name of this function? I think I should give it the same name of update channel name. So I can come here and paste it. Now, since this is a function, what do? I'm going to be creating an arrow function that is going to be doing what? Dispatching something. What is it going to be dispatching? You guessed it right. You can see it over here. It is going to be dispatching an action. Now, if you go back to our user, what does an action look like? This is an action over here. Remember what I told you, an action is just an information you send to the reducer. So over here in our settings, I want to send an information, and the information I'm sending, okay, cool. And the information I'm sending is what? A type which says, hey, reducer, can you kindly update the channel name? Yes, I could do that, but with what value? With flying dodo. So now, instead of passing flying dodo here manually, I'm going to say update it with a value. This value, I'm going to get it from this function here. So I think I should have that. So in app, okay, yes. So this update channel name, you can see the previous way we did it when we just used our update channel name handler. We passed, it took an argument called value. And we now did what? Set channel name using this use state hook. We now said set channel name with that value. So this value is going to be gotten from this input field over here. But now we are going to be doing it with Redox. The reason I brought back this code is just to show you that this value, we are passing it as an argument to the function. So this was the previous way we did it. So now, inside the settings app, that's the same thing we are also doing. Can you see this value? Update channel name with this value. Where would I get this value? I'll get it from this input field. Meanwhile, there's a shorter way to actually achieve this. The reason most of what I'm doing now, there are shorter ways to actually do it. But I'm doing it with this way for you guys to understand how Redox works. Because in the fourth video, in the fourth video, I'm going to show you how to make all these codes smaller. But this is just the basic way we are doing it from scratch. So now, update channel name is a function. It's a property that has a function in it. So you can see this value over here. So what it does is take this value and update the channel name with it. So now this map dispatch to props, I'm going to be passing it as a second argument. Yeah. And I'm going to save it. And this code should work. The reason why it should work is because update channel name is already a property of the settings component. Can you see it here? Update channel name is already a property of the settings component. And let's try it out. Can you see? Everything is working. Flying dodo. Everything is currently working via Redox. And we are very sure it is working via Redox because, can you see the screens component? We did not pass in channel name and we did not pass in update channel name from there. So we skipped this guy over here. And we also skipped this guy over here. We just implement everything from this settings component. This type of component, if you are used to fancy names, they call it like a container component, whereby you just have your whole state management logic here, then you pass it down into all these dummy components that just consumes the data. So a brief recap once more. I head over to my reducer.js and look at the steps. Your component dispatches an action. So the component over here, if I go to content, update channel name is actually calling this action. So when I type, I'm actually dispatching an action that is going to go to the reducer. And the reason why this is updating is because of this if statement over here. So if action.type is equals to update channel name, then update it with the channel name that we passed. So that is why while I type, the reducer is updating our store. You can see how Redox works. While I type, the reducer is updating our store. But now, I would show you another, I'll still come back to explain why I spread this stuff over here. But another advantage of Redox is something you can, something called like, you can easily debug actions that execute in your application. So I'll show you that quickly. And to make that possible, we use something called the Redux DevTools extension. So you can add it to your Chrome browser, and this stuff is just going to show you how actions are being dispatched in your application. You can do time travel, you can pause and play your actions. I'll show you how all this works. So the first thing, you install it in your Chrome web browser. Then the next thing to do would be to install this guy over here. Where are you? Yeah, the Redux DevTools extension. So you'd also install this stuff. I've already done that already. So the next thing to do would be, I could show you quickly. So in my package.json, can you see Redux DevTools extension? So we can actually connect this extension to our store and you'll see the advantage. So I'm just going to copy this guy here. I don't need any enhancer and middlewares. We'll be talking about middlewares in the next videos where I'll talk about how to use Redux Saga. So I'll just copy this guy over here and we'll pass it as the second argument. DevTools enhancer. Then we save. So what this does is it connects our Redux JS application to the Google Chrome Redux DevTools extension. So I'll bring out my, where are you? I'll head over to, can you see, because of the added extension, we have it over here. So watch what happens here. Whenever I type, whenever I send an action, this Redux DevTools shows us the action being dispatched. Do you notice? Whenever I change the value inside here, update channel name is being changed. So I could change it to, can you see, Flying Dodo, and you can see it updates the channel name every single time. So looking for something. Where are you? Okay. Okay, so you can see the stuff is being shown every time. Can you see this update channel name is the name of our action? If you go back here to our reducer or to our settings screen, can you see this is the action we're actually dispatching? So with Redux DevTools, you can be able to see the action you are dispatching. But there's something I'm trying to look for here. Nope. Okay, yes. So I can actually step back. Can you see? I can actually pause and play the changes I have. If you look over here, everything changes while I step forward. So with this, you can easily debug how your actions are being dispatched in your application. So this is just a very handy way. This video is not all about showing you how to use Redux DevTools, but I'm just showing you that you can be able to do so many things. If you want to get more information, you can check out what it does over here in the documentation. But now, I think this way of updating our states looks very ugly. What's happening? Post. Okay, I paused it. So can you see post? So I can actually play. Then I can see how my state was being updated. So everything works. So instead of doing this stuff, let me just quickly create a button by the side so you can see. So we are done. We're done. I'll still explain some stuff, but let me just quickly do this. So in our settings, content. So instead of making it an unchanged, I want to show you guys that Redux is mainly used to handle your global states. You can still manage your local states with React hooks. So over here, I'll just create a simple button with the type update channel name. Then on click, I don't want it to be this event handler to be in the unchanged. I want it to be in the on click event of the button. So I could just come here and copy this, paste it. Then for the unchanged event handler, I'm going to create a local variable called name, set name. This is React hook stuff. I just want to show you that Redux is just mainly focused on managing your global states. You can still use your use state hook to manage your local states. So what should be the default value? channel name. Cool. Then over here on change should be set name. And this should work. Okay, I could make it big. So watch and see. While I type in here, oops, something is not working. Let me go figure it out. So value on change, e.target.value, name, set name. Okay, where do I use this name? Okay, yeah. So name is going to be, oops. Value is going to be name. Okay. So the value of the input field is going to be this name we are managing locally. And the initial value of this input field should be the channel name we are getting from our Redox store. So whenever I click on this button update, it should, when I click on this button update, it should do what? Take in the name, which is from this local state. So watch and see. Can you see? We don't have any action being dispatched to the store because now we don't want to always disturb the store whenever we change a value. So it is also good to actually do this. So update what you want to update locally, then you click on update channel and voila, everything updates. Can you see? Update channel name has been dispatched. So we can keep going and do different stuffs. Can you see? All these other guys are not changing until I click this. And you can see update channel name. And remember, we can actually go back and we can go front. So this is how to make use of Redux in your application. So we transformed every single thing we did from our normal use state and prop drilling down to use Redux. So now one more thing I want to show you is a lot of people get this stuff confused, get confused over this stuff. And why do you need to spread this guy over here? So if I don't spread this guy over here, there's something Redux does. Redux and Redux DevTools, they make use of shallow equality, which just checks if the object values have changed and know when to render your components. So let me show you what that means. Let me just quickly do something. Although the Redux documentation has lots of, what are they calling it? User, lots of documentation and explanation of how immutability works. So I'm adding one extra guy, one extra property to the state. So we have user called John. So watch and see. When I save this, I can be able to go back to our app components and we can, what did I store it as? User, okay. I can be able to go back to our app components. Let me just store it as username so it won't conflict with something else. It doesn't matter. So I'll come back here and I do what? I make use of the state. So state.user, I put a comma because it's an object. Then over here in our app components, and this is so nice. Our app component is so small right now. I can be able to say h3 username would be what? User. So watch and see when I save this. Okay, username John. So if I come to this reducer here and I don't spread, because what this spread operator, you can use the object.assign function too, but what this spread operator does is that it goes to this state over here, and you know this state refers to initial state, and it takes all the whole values over here and clones it into this place. So over here, what we are currently saying is this. We are saying this stuff. We are saying this stuff like this. This is what we are saying. Then we now override channel name. So if we don't do it this way, we are currently updating this object immutably. If we mutate the object, that means changing the values directly if we do something like this, if I don't clone the previous value and just do this, watch and see what happens. So now, just watch. If I change this to flying dodo, watch what happens to this guy over here. If I click update channel name, can you see the username disappears? Because here we are replacing, we are not keeping track of the previous state values. So you always have to kind of like copy the previous state, because your store is being connected to different apps, and your store is being connected to different components. So whenever you want to update state, you have to make a copy of the previous state, so that all data in your components will still have the previous value. So now, one other advantage of this is that if you don't mutate your states, this guy over here would always be re-rendering, because this shallow equality just checks to see if the object values change. So if we did not put this spread operator, it means that channel name exists but user does not exist. So what happens? It automatically re-renders your application. I'll put some links to explain all this stuff. I don't want to go so deep into explaining the complexities of Redux. I just want to use this series to give you guys a good basic understanding of how Redux works. So far so good. We have finally converted every single thing to make use of Redux, and we have solved these 4 problems over here. So I don't know if this is necessary, but I'll just do a brief recap. The first thing we did was to do what? To create a store. Can you see the store over here? And the store needs what? An important argument called the reducer. This DevTools enhancer, remember I told you guys when you go to create store, that you can see the enhancer is optional. So this enhancer, like you can see the name, it just enhances your Redux store. And the enhancer we added here was what? We added the Redux DevTools extension, and it's just an enhancer for us to be able to track the changes in our store. So that is an enhancer. So we created a store with a reducer, and this reducer, what it does is just simply does what? It updates the store. And how does it update the store? It receives an action, because this action is an information being sent by the component. So when it receives this action over here, it checks the type. Okay, what do you want to actually do to the store? I want to do what? Update the channel name and take this data. Where is the data stored? In the payload. You guys get? So I check the action type and I execute, and I what? Update the state with this payload.channel name. So now, how do we connect to this store? We can see that very clearly using the what? Connect function. And the reason we can connect to this store is because of, in our index.js, we wrapped our entire application with the provider component over here and passed it to the store. That is why in settings.js, we can be able to connect to our store. And when we connect to our store, the values in our store, the data in our store will be passed as a property to this component. So that is just the basic flow of how Redux works. I know there was a lot of explanation in this video that might not even be necessary, but I'm just glad that in the first video we saw the problems associated with Redux, and we successfully solved them in this video. I don't know if I'll save this. Probably I'll save this and add it as a description to the YouTube video, although this is not really necessary, but I'm just showing you how this stuff works, how to have this double parenthesis in your connect function, that it is made possible by the higher order functions. Or what am I saying? Is it higher order? No, like closure. I said higher order function. Sorry. This is a closure over here. This inner guy. So I think that'll be all for this video. So in the next video, we'll be talking about making asynchronous requests and the concept of middlewares. So thank you for watching. If you have any question, you do add it in the comment section. Then in the next video, we'll be talking about middlewares and Redux Saga. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.